relationship between the father and daughter.
This show is brought to you by courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times and over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could and has taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. The Gift and Craft Shop is open daily from Monday to Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m, selling a wide variety of paranormal items, books, magazines, merchandise stock, and cats. Why not pay them a visit to pick up a gift with a difference? Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective discounts. And why not download the app, available on iOS and Android for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
So, let's take a look at some of the suspects. First up, Carl Gabriel, the head of the family and husband of Victoria Gabriel. It had been reported that Carl Gabriel had been killed in Arras, France, by a shell attack in December 1914 during the First World War. However, his body had never been recovered. After the murders, people began to speculate on whether he had indeed died in the war. Victoria Gabriel had given birth to Joseph in her husband's absence. There is one popular theory that the Grubers and Marianne Bartengartner were killed by Victoria's husband. Supporters of this theory believe Gabriel didn't actually die in combat. They speculated that Victoria's husband returned to the Hinterkaifeck farm after several years, and when he realised that his wife had been with another man, resulting in baby Joseph, he murdered all 6 residents in a fit of rage. While many people believe Victoria's 2-year-old son Joseph was the child of Lorenz Slitzenbauer, a man who lived near the family, some of the Gruber's neighbours believed that the child was the product of Andreas' incestuous relationship with his eldest daughter. This was documented in court and well known in the village. This incestuous relationship between Andreas Gruber and his daughter Victoria happened 7 years before the murders. Both were convicted of incest in 1915. She served 1 month in jail for the crime, while her father was sent away for an entire year. At the end of the Second World War, captives from the Schroedenbausen region who were released prematurely from Soviet captivity said that they had been sent home by a German-speaking Soviet officer who claimed to be the murderer of Hinterkaifeck. Many theorise that this Soviet might have been Carl Gabriel. Next up, the Gump brothers. Adolf Gump was listed as a suspect as early as April 9th, just a few days after the murders. In 1951, prosecutor Andreas Popp investigated brothers Adolf and Anton Gump in relation to the murders at Hinterkaifeck. Their sister, Crescentia Meyer, claimed on her deathbed that Adolf and Anton had committed the murders. As a result, Anton Gump was remanded into police custody, but Adolf had already died in 1944. Anton was dismissed again after a short time, and in 1954 the case against him was finally discontinued because it could not be proven that he participated in the crime. Next suspect, Peter Weber. Peter Weber was named a suspect by Joseph Betts. The two worked together in the winter of 1919-1920 as labourers who shared a chamber. According to Betts, Weber spoke of the remote farm Hinterkaifeck. Weber only knew that one old couple lived there with their daughter and her 2 children. Betts testified in a hearing that Weber had suggested killing the old man to get the family's money. When Betts did not respond to the offer, Weber stopped talking any more about it. Next up, Paul Mueller. In the last chapter of the book, The Man from the Train, by Bill James and his daughter Rachel McCarthy James, they briefly discuss the murders at Hinterkaifeck. The authors explain the possibility that the German crimes might have been committed by Paul Mueller. The authors believe he killed several families in the United States under similar circumstances between 1898 and 1912. The murders attributed to Mueller include the Villisca axe murders, see Show 5, where apparently random nighttime home invasions in or near small railroad towns left entire families bludgeoned to death with the blunt end of an axe, and were probably motivated by a sadistic and necrophilic attraction to prepubescent girls. The authors rate the chances of Mueller as a Hinterkaifeck killer as more or less a coin toss-up and conclude there's no real reason to believe that it's not him. Bill James believes Mueller killed dozens of victims based on research in the American newspaper archives. The Hinterkaifeck murders do bear some similarities to Mueller's other suspected crimes in the United States, including the slaughter of an entire family in their isolated home, use of the blunt edge of a farm tool as a weapon, a mattock axe, and the apparent absence of robbery as a motive. Mueller had been described as a German immigrant who might have departed the US for his homeland after private investigators and journalists began to notice and publicize patterns in family murders across the state line following the brazen 1912 murder of 2 families in a single night in Colorado Springs, and a similar family murder weeks afterwards a few hundred miles away in neighboring Kansas. Last up, the Thaler brothers. According to a statement by the former maid, Crescens Rieger, the brothers had already committed several minor burglaries in the area before the crime. She said that Joseph Thaler stood at her window at night and asked her questions about the family, but she never replied. In a conversation, Joseph Thaler claimed to know which family member was sleeping in which room and stated that he knew they had a lot of money. During their conversation, Rieger noted that there was another person nearby. According to her statement, Joseph Thaler and the stranger had looked at the machine house and turned their eyes upwards. You can read about other suspects on this case online. Some witnesses reported a mysterious man hanging around the Gruber farm and believed he might have been the culprit. One individual who passed the Gruber's farmhouse the day after the Hinterkaifeck murders said he crossed the paths with a man carrying a lantern there. However, because of the glare, he could not see the man's face. The Hinterkaifeck murders had to have been perpetrated by someone familiar with farm work, as the killer maintained the farm for days and was very handy with a mattock axe, but not someone who lived on the Gruber farm itself. The brutal nature of the murders suggested someone with a grudge against one or more members of the family. Despite this information, police were still unable to find any solutions to the crime. Also, despite repeated arrests, no murderer was ever found, so the files were closed in 1955. Nevertheless, the last interrogations took place in 1986, 31 years later, before Commissioner Konrad Müller retired. In 1923, just a year after the Gruber family and their maid were viciously murdered, the Hinterkaifeck farm was razed to the ground, and a memorial to the victims was put in its place. In addition to the simple concrete shrine, there is also a memorial to the victims in the Weidhofen cemetery, where the bodies of the Grubers and their housekeeper were laid to rest. In 1999, an elderly woman contacted the authorities, claiming her former landlord admitted to having information about the Hinterkaifeck killings. Officials investigated this tip and learned the landlord had supposedly made this claim back in 1935. However, it came too late, as the potential suspect mentioned in the lead was no longer alive in 1999. 80 years after the Gruber family and their maid were killed, 15 students at a German police academy used modern techniques to investigate the unsolved case. They also confirmed the meticulousness of the investigation at the time, but criticised the lack of professional forensics. To be fair, they weren't as readily available back then when the crime was committed as they are now. In particular, though, the failures to take fingerprints was criticised, as this was already common practice at the time. The students in their final report, written in German, ruled out all but one suspect they believe committed the murders at the Hinterkaifeck farm. However, the suspected killer is dead, so they didn't publicly name the person they think is responsible for the massacre, out of respect for the suspect's relatives, who are still alive. Today, books, movies, articles and podcasts about the gruesome Hinterkaifeck murders continue to enthrall us. The town now goes by the name of Weidhofen, and although the old structures no longer exist on the farm, there is still the memorial where visitors can stop and pay their respects. Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. Next time we are going to look at the Jamison family disappearance. On the 8th of October 2009, or around that date, Bobby Jamison, his wife Sherilyn, and their daughter Madison mysteriously disappeared. At the time that they had vanished, the family was reportedly considering the purchase of a 40-acre plot of land near Red Oak, about 30 miles, 48 kilometres, from Eufaula. Their suspected remains were found in November 2013 and positively identified by the Oklahoma Medical Examiner on the 3rd of July 2014. This show was written by Mark Hughes and edited by Linda Hughes, with special thanks to Neil Packer and his staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley. And remember, guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.